I'm Paul Traynor, I'm the editor of Glasgow World. I'm here with Elaine C. Smith, who's just been awarded the Freedom of the City. I thought I'd take the opportunity to get to know a bit more about Glasgow from your perspective, Elaine.
Yeah. Well, everybody's got a different perspective about Glasgow, you know. But fire away.
So if you're just going out for a day in the town, you're meeting pals, what's your kind of Glasgow routine,
well,
would you say?
It's a different routine for me now from it was, because not that I think I'm Brad Pitt or anything like that and I'm so famous, but you are very aware of, you know, now where you would go.
Yeah.
Not that people aren't lovely or whatever, but if you want to go out and just have a quiet time and a quiet drink, gone are the days of being able to have a drink and, you know, get steaming and fall out the pub, because somebody now would be taking a selfie of that and sending it to the likes of you, saying, look at the state she was in. So it does make you more sort of private about the places that you go to. So you tend to have private. My husband and I are out, you know, we'll go to the Everyman, we'll go to the cinema, we'll go up in Finnieston, maybe go to the Crab Shack, or up Byres Road up that way, although we live in the East End. It depends what we're going to do. If we're going to the theatre, it would be, if we're up in the Kings, then Glasgow's got so many different pockets of places to go.
Yeah, that kind of brings me on to, because I'm interested in kind of neighbourhoods that either you really love or that you kind of associate with parts of your life and career.
Oh, there's loads of places that I do. I mean, I live in the East End, so the East End is a real special place in my heart, and coming in up to I had my kids there and all of that. Denison, it's great seeing what's happened to Denison, and I suppose some people don't like as much gentrification that's happened there, but it's great to see it thriving.
So it's like gentle gentrification in the sense that, you know, everyone's kind of still where there's a lot of families are still there.
Well, that's what I love about it. You know, I go to floristers, always get my flowers in floristers, because I know the girls in there. I go in Koya's. Those are sort of stalwart places to go. If I'm getting alterations done, I get them done. I go up that way. I think I like the fact that the East End, and particularly Duke Street in that area, has held on to who it is.
Yeah.
But there are other areas. I love going over to. I've got pals and friends in the South Side, and going over to cafes and shops and stuff like that, and relatives over there in Pollock Shields. But I'm like going the West End. I like Finnieston. I like certain areas in the centre of the town as well. So I think once you get to know Glasgow and you've been here for so long, you feel part of all those areas in many ways, or I certainly do.
I was going to ask you about restaurants and bars, but it wouldn't necessarily be. What about restaurants and bars that you just think of that have got a real deep connection with your idea of Glasgow? You know, it could be from any era. There could be places that you just thought that's Glasgow hospitality for me. There
are great pubs. I'm not a particular pub person. My husband would be better on that in pubs. But when I started out and I was at drama school and all of that, round the corner, which is now, I think it's H&M or somewhere, but that was the Ivanhoe Hotel.
Right, yeah.
And that was right next to the Royal Academy, and the Ivanhoe was where all the actors and all the musicians went, you know. The Tron had that atmosphere in the bar, and it's been a real shame over the last few years that was a real centre for actors and various drunkards to go to. But there are fantastic pubs. I do love lots of ones in the East End. I probably would go in. My daughter worked in the Pally Bar in Denison for a while, so I would go in there at certain events. But there would come a certain point in the evening when I'd think, time to go home now, you know. There are great restaurants in the centre. I love going to the Ivy. The Ivy's a great one for my sisters or my pals, and just a lovely atmosphere in there. It feels very easy and safe. But if I've gone along as lots of Glasgow hospitality. The best, I suppose, would be my sisters always call it the watery shoe, which is oh God, what's the proper name of it? I've just forgotten it. The Waterloo Shoe, which is a gay bar with karaoke, and Christy McMurdo is fantastic karaoke in there, and they also have some of the cheapest cocktails you'll ever have in your life. But
they've got it all going on.
They've got it all going on. So if people were here for a night out, I'd say I would end up in that place. It's wild, but you'd get a very warm Glasgow welcome in there.
Yeah. What about your favourite Glasgow building? Is there anywhere that stands out?
I've got lots of favourite buildings. Actually, thinking about this today, when I first, because I'm so old, in 1975 when I started at drama school, walking through here to get to the Athenaeum as it was, all the buildings were black. They were that was before all the sandblasting happened. So Glasgow's a very dark city. But I never knew what this building was. And then people would say the City Chambers, and I'd be like, what happens there? Yeah. A lot of people still ask that, but what goes on in there? Anyway, but I would say, I mean, there are loads of beautiful buildings. When, you know, the Royal Infirmary and the cathedral is quite stunning, you know, just as a piece of architecture and building there. But I think in the town, it would be the Athenaeum.
Yeah.
Or it's now a beautiful Thai restaurant. But I walk through the doors and I'm immediately back to 1975, 76. The places where, that's the toilet where I was greeting about some broken heart, or that's the blah, blah, you know, all that comes flooding back to me. And the upper floors being the canteen as well, where all of life went on in the canteen in there. So that's a special place.
When you were there starting out, I talked to James McAvoy last week,
James,
and you know, like he studied from the same. He got the same start, the same kind of, you know, hopes and dreams. Did you imagine that you'd be able to create such a career when you were at that stage? Never.
I never. From a working class background, I'm sure James. I've met James several times. I know Joy, his sister, very, very well. She's in 2 doors down with me, and. You know, we've had lots of chats about that. When you come from a working class background, you know, the things you're allowed to dream about are and particularly for women, are at that era, were few and far between. And I went to the academy to become a teacher. So I did the teaching course. I wasn't brave enough to ever think I could be a proper actress. It wasn't until I got there that I realised that I had talent, and I had as much talent, more than, less than other people. But I just had no idea how you would be an actor, so I was a singer. I sung in clubs and sung in lots of pubs, the Maggie, the Amphora, His Nibs, all around Glasgow. And I did clubs before that as well. So I could see myself being a singer.
Sure.
But I couldn't see myself. And also people with working class accents didn't get to be. Your whole time at drama school, I was there a long time before James, but then it was all about received pronunciation. It was all about speaking like a proper actor, and that was the way you spoke. And a trace of a working class Glasgow accent, forget it. So I was very, very fortunate in that when after I became a teacher, but around about 1979, 80, things changed in this city, and I mean, even the citizens up until then didn't audition in Scotland. They only auditioned in London. So you could get a job at the Panto when you were doing 3 shows a day, but you couldn't get a job in the main company. Yeah. That was all. Very few Scots, about a couple, but very few get in there. I remember Dominic Hill, when he took over, he met me at something, and he just assumed that I would have worked there, and I went, no, I've worked in the theatre when there was in the Steamy and various shows going in, but with Wildcat in 784, Borderline, but I never ever was asked to be part of the company or audition, because you know you were from here, so what was that? But I was lucky in that Michael Boyd took over the Tron, and that John McGrath, Dave Anderson, Dave McLaren had started Wildcat in 784. And when I saw them in the Citizens Theatre, I remember thinking, I could do that. I was at drama school, that's what I want to do. Yeah. I never dreamed I'd be on television. I never dreamed any of that would happen. My dream came true when I joined 784 in Wildcat. To be it because I played keyboards and I sung and I acted, that was the pinnacle for me. But it coincided with Colin Gilbert starting the comedy unit at BBC, and realising there was a lot of talent here.
Around here. And they were mostly working on the stage then, and then that kind of transferred onto television, right?
Yeah, he saw me in a Wildcat show and cast me in with Robbie Coltrane, and Laugh I nearly paid my licence fee. But then out of that came, and John Sessions was in that as well. Miriam Margolyes, no, she was Kick Up the 80s just before, but I met her during that. And out of that came Naked Radio.
Yeah.
And out of Naked Radio became Naked Radio, blah, 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 blah. So
one of my earliest memories of hearing someone with a local accent is sketches on Naked Video and it's City Lights and stuff like that. And now at the Kings, I took my wee boy to see the Panto there, and you know he's going to have very early memories of Glasgow humour in the theatre. Is there anyone you can remember like being inspired by, with very early memories of seeing someone up at stage speaking like you or being like you and thinking, yeah, that's how I can bridge that chasm and get going?
No, not then. There were no women. The women that were on television in Scotland were Mary Marquis, who read the report in Scotland, very coiffed and lovely with a lovely Kelvin side accent. Or Moira Anderson at New Year, you know, lovely singer, all of that. But they were very conservative. But I do remember seeing Barbara Dixon on a show, and I couldn't believe she was from Dunfermline, and she was in the show John Paul, George, Ringo and Bert, the Willie Russell thing. And I was like, how did that happen? How could you be? I'm being really, really inspired. And fortunately, I've worked with Barbara over the years and been able to tell her that it blew my mind that this was possible, but it was men. It was men watching. I do remember seeing Una McLean in Scotch and Rye or with Stanley Baxter on television, but I didn't really go to the theatre. You know, the theatre for us, I lived at that point. I was brought up in Motherwell. That was a big thing, and theatre was expensive to go to, and there were cinemas near us, but there was no real tradition of theatre. So my theatre was really in school when I did stuff. So getting to see people finally, you know, to see Jack Mulroy and Ricky Fulton on stage, to see Jimmy Logan, but it was really through the medium of television that I saw them in. But again, I was a woman, so I very rarely. And then I remember doing the Steamy when we did the Steamy, and I had taken the play. I was doing Naked Video with Tony Roper. He gave me the play to read and said Smudger, as him and Gregor also. I said, Smudger, read this. This is about women. Nobody will put it on. And it had been written and nobody would put it on because they thought, what's that? What's interesting about that? I'd like to say I immediately went, oh, this is a hit. I didn't. I took it because your dread as an actor is when a pal says going to read my play. You're like, oh no, what if it's terrible? So I took it home. I read it in my bed, a cup of tea, and I thought, oh, this is good. I did think that the men's section, which became iconic, was a bit too long, and another bit, the phone call. I thought, I don't know how that'll work, but I did think with songs, to comment on it would make it less upper close or Kale Yard, because there was a real snobbery about working people and all that in theatre. I didn't really think it that way. I just thought that the songs, because I'd come out of Wildcat and I took it to Wildcat, and Dave Anderson and Davy Hicks wrote one of the songs as well. Dave Anderson and Dave Hicks, they wrote the song. Like Margaret's big song, Wonderful to Be a Woman, was a speech, but they turned it into a wonderful song. And being on stage with Dorothy Paul, watching her and seeing what she could do with an audience, and hearing her story, which was it's her story to tell, but not an easy journey for a woman in variety and theatre and television. Great stories as well, but her ability to hold an audience, to not be afraid of them, was just fantastic. I learnt loads from watching her. But then I remember going to see pantos with my kids. I was still never in them because I was much more in the alternative comedy. So I loved doing the Tron, which was a bit more irreverent and a bit more, the funny fairy and Alex Norton had written a brilliant Peter and Penny's panto that Michael Boyd directed and all of that. So it was more about that. You sort of not took the piss, but it was irreverent about the bigger pantos. And I love the fact I'm at the other end now, and Johnny McKnight at the Tron will relentlessly take the piss out of us as well, which is exactly how it should be. But seeing that and knowing what was possible and watching other people, I think it's the best thing any actor can do, is watch other people. Yeah. But it was mainly through television I saw, and there were very, very rare occurrences by women.
Yeah. You're in a situation now where, you know, you've just talked about all these wonderful creative people that you've managed to work with, all these wonderful projects you've managed to do here in Glasgow. Do you hope that Glasgow's still a place that would attract people that wants to come here and do creative endeavours, that we can still come up with bands, we come up with scripts and come up with all that stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I hope so. There's an attitude in Glasgow, you know, that it's not an easy city, Glasgow. It's a tough city as well. I remember going to New York the first time and feeling completely at home because that attitude of New Yorkers was just in your face, Glasgow. Yeah. You don't get above yourself in Glasgow. If they like you, they like you, and they celebrate you. But there will always be somebody going, I'm not that keen on her, whatever, which is an attitude I love, because I've got a bit of that attitude as well. But I've been really fortunate to be around a sort of burgeoning time and a self-confidence, because you used to have to leave to be successful.
So hopefully it's now a city that people were wanting, because of that legacy, because of the things that happened in the 80s and the 90s, completely changed the perception of Glasgow as a city. And a lot of that's to do with, like, you know, things that you were involved with, television shows that projected out. So
we were lucky. We were lucky that Colin Gilbert decided to set up the comedy unit in Glasgow. And, you know, a sense of humour in Glasgow is a necessity, you know. It's a weapon as well as a necessity. And it seemed absolutely right to him, you know, to bring in Robbie Coltrane, John Sessions, all these people I mean, he in effect helped make Robbie a star, and then Gregor Fisher and Tony Roper, myself, Andy Gray, Johnny Watson, that team of people coming in. I was still in the minority as a woman, but see it Ford and Greg and Karen Barr, people like that, bringing them all through and seeing that there was talent here and there was creativity here, and you didn't have to leave. And the great thing about Rabsy and Two Doors Down and Naked Video, they were network programs, because there was an attitude that if you were doing something only in Scotland or only in Glasgow, it was parochial, it was Kale Yard, it was, and you had things like Dr. Finley's Casebook that were networked before that, and huge things, and the White Heather Club, but that was given a particular type of picture of Scotland, quite conservative and safe, whereas I was lucky to come along at a time where we were allowed to do stuff that was on the edge a bit and was reaching, but that we owned it. It wasn't companies coming up here with actors doing bad Scottish accents and saying, oh, this is a Scottish, and it wasn't. And there is a cringe factor I think here, you know, the cultural cringe, where if Scots like it, then it can't be that good, you know. And I've always thought, well, nobody in Norway says, oh, they don't like that in Sweden. Why we go, if you're not a success in London? And even when you look at the people who have been given the freedom of the city, it's about people who've left and made something of themselves. And that it's almost that we need other people to tell us they're funny. So I was lucky in that era that I was able to stay and do network programs, do touring shows and all of that went south and toured, but they originated here, and that creativity and those abilities were here. And I could see it at the time with the bands I loved as well. It was a fantastic feeling, and I sincerely hope that people still feel that this is a place they can come to and be creative and be part of something.
When you're around in Glasgow, Elaine, what do you get recognised most for, do you think?
I realised things had really changed when I did my stand-up show in telly, and I went from, oh, there's that woman that plays Mary Doll, to there's Elaine C. Smith.
Yeah, all right.
So I became more than that. I still get, as Elaine C. Smith, you'll hear somebody go, who's that? Her that played Mary Doll, or her that's in Two Doors Down, or her. But because of pantos, because of my own stand-up shows, because of I've just been Chitty Chitty Bang Bang last year, or Annie, or musicals, or things like that, Calendar Girls, The Steamy. You look at all that, people, you become more than the part you were known for. It's one of the reasons that I love soap opera, but it's one of the reasons I sort of steered clear of it, because it's easier now, I think. You've got people like Suran Jones and people like that leaving and being able, but it used to be really difficult. You would get trapped in that, and you were that character. I'm happy to take Mary Nesbitt and Christine O'Neill with me around Glasgow, no bother. Yeah. So it's a mixture of them all now,
Mayflies, you had a wonderful turn in Mayflies. Then, even with Two Doors Down now, it still seems like it's quite an interesting time to be working in television.
Mayflies, Andrew Hagan is a dear, dear pal, but he's also one of the finest writers that, but I just love him. So when they approached me to do that, because I loved that book, I think I bought more copies. I think my fee actually paid for all the copies I've sent in. But to just get that little part, but it was a pivotal part as well. It was an important part in the journey and of those characters. Budget restraints and everything. There was more that could have been done with that, but it was fantastic to do. And I do think when you look at the city, there are loads of things going on that I don't know about. And I go, I never knew that. That's what I love about Glasgow. I love going places in Glasgow going, I never knew this existed, or a new place you discover, or a new area, or seeing what's happened places. I never knew that happened. I was involved in the sort of pilot we did for Wax Fruit. And that, again, I found out something about Glasgow I never knew. I never realised Glasgow stopped here.
Yeah.
And of course, it makes sense. You go, of course, the High Street, that would be it. That the Glasgow was the East End, and that where they used to go to Partick for their holidays and stuff like that. All of that is quite fascinating, and I don't think Glaswegians tell. But that might be to do with the media and the way it's portrayed or whatever. But no, you look at New York, and there are a plethora of stories. You don't only look at Goodfellas and think that's New York. Yeah. Because there's Woody Allen, there's musicals, there's all these stories about New York. The problem is we're through a very narrow prism, maybe of one big programme a year. There hasn't really been a really big drama about this city for a long time. And therefore people think, that's what it is, because you're not being able to tell all the stories. And there are huge stories here. So I think there are many stories still to tell, and enough talent here to do it. But it comes down to money and commissioning and who commissions and class and loads of other things about what stories get to be told.
Okay, well, enjoy the freedom of Glasgow, Elaine.
I can bear arms now. I can bear arms. And I was laughing saying, I come from the East End. I've been bearing arms in the East End. That's where I live. Well, not always legally, but...
On that note, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you, darling.